Hey everyone, welcome back to CryptoCache. Thanks again for joining me here. Hope you're having a fantastic and amazing day. Happy Monday to you. If there is such a thing, I guess, depends on where you're at in the world and the workplace. But nonetheless, we're looking at Bitcoin here, of course, helping understand best practice and big picture. So if you are new to the channel, not a financial advisor, love teaching people to trade, I hope you can learn something today. And obviously, if you want to become a better trader, CryptoCache.tech is the website. Link in the description below. Now, here's something to note. What we're going to take a look at, of course, is a couple of things, obviously. Specific key level resistances, we're going to revisit that from yesterday and also kind of understand, kind of where we're at in the general sense of the traditional markets as well, because there is some interesting behavior there. I just want to kind of touch on that. So we'll take a look at that, and obviously a few other things. So let's start with dollar index first of all. It is absolutely up. It's definitely cranking. But here's the thing, it's kind of testing a key level resistance, so there's potential we might see retracement, which could imply Bitcoin might increase from here. Again, depends on the candlestick closure for today, of course. And again, dollar index is a little different for the TA than it would be for just say a traditional market, but on the same accord, it still is the same concept. And in this regard, support and resistance levels are typically very normal to kind of pay attention to and to recognize that they do happen, right? That being said, we have the ascending type of trend here with the 50-day set moving average. So, all in all, this trend is continuing higher until it doesn't, but there's a chance we could see a pullback, hypothetically, to bounce off this level and continue higher. If that were to happen, we'd see essentially a dead cat bounce, the inverse of what the dollar index is doing. Again, Bitcoin is not 100% specifically following the dollar index, but it definitely has a tendency of aligning itself with that as far as the inverse pairing. When it comes to S&P, we can see a very similar situation here. We're kind of tentatively lost a key level support right here at about 4170, and we lost the ascending trend as well. So S&P is on the way down, and there's a great chance that continues lower. Bitcoin would go lower too, right? So again, we can see very similar story here with NASDAQ as well. Even though that level is getting tested, so to speak, we haven't seen a candlestick closure just yet, so we don't need to jump any guns. But there's been some significant gaps down in the last 24 to 48 hours. So this could imply further downside for those markets. So again, just something to kind of think about, just add that to your thought process. And generally speaking, those are, with those markets coming down, dollar index coming up, Bitcoin has more potential for retracement. It's just the realisticness of the situation, okay? So that's kind of where we're at there for that. Let's take a look closer here at Bitcoin and kind of see what's going on. This is going to be kind of a repeat from yesterday to an extent because not a lot has changed. We do have a nice looking candlestick here though. Even though it is red, yes, it's still a type of, what they think it's referred to as a dragonfly doji. It's the inverse of a gravestone. In other words, the price had started and closed at the same exact spot when the bears tried to push the price action down and it couldn't any further. So that's usually a positive sign. Now the candlestick hasn't closed yet and we're still testing a key level resistance, so honestly it's fairly conflicting, but it is still relevant in the sense of the fact that if that closes just a little bit higher, say we close closer to 21,500, that might be more of a bullish indication. Again, this is strictly on Bitcoin, not looking at anything else. Looking at the RSI doesn't really tell us too much of a story. Kind of standard stuff here. Still kind of stuck under 50. We probably will be for some time. We're also going to be stuck under 50 on the moving average. The SMA 50 right at about 22,000. We'll say 500 because it'll probably be closer to 500 by the time the price gets there. So 22.5 is a pretty strong key level resistance. It's also a Fibonacci retracement level. We also have 21,700, and as I mentioned yesterday, 21.6, 21.7. Those are key level supports and resistances, depending on which side you're on. At this level, we can expect it to continue to work as a resistance, and I think the probability of the price coming down lower from here is pretty high. It just kind of feels like it wants to continue lower. Again, that's just generally a feeling based on what I get from other factors, not just looking at the one chart, right? We do have a significant divergence here still continuing. This is a very extreme, but on the same accord, we've seen this happen plenty of times before. It could absolutely continue lower. All right, so again, even though you'd like to say that it's going to average itself out and come back, it doesn't always do that. So taking a look here at the 4 hour, let's see if we can kind of get a different narrative. We are trending above the 20-day SMA. I don't put a lot of weight into that on the 4 hour, but it is still relevant, and that could possibly imply that we have a tentative increase in value. Once again, depends on how those support and resistance levels work on the traditional markets. That's going to kind of factor in here in the next 24 to 48 hours. But when we look at the RSI, we're still below 50 and above 30. So it could literally come lower, could come up and test that level. The bottom line is that we do have some resistances, and those are going to hold the price action in place. So even though we are seeing a MACD convergence here, so to speak, it's not significant. I mean, ever since we've seen the convergence itself, the price has almost averaged itself out. So when you see a MACD convergence and the price action not really doing a whole heck of a lot, it's one of those things you kind of got to pay attention to. In other words, it's not really factoring in too much, in the sense that it didn't have that strength to come up, and the resistance levels are still holding. Okay, so it really just tells us that the MACD is kind of essentially, a false positive there. At least it was earlier in the week, or a couple days ago rather, because it keeps getting rejected at this level. So taking a look at the 1 hour, let's go ahead and just summarize here with the cloud, kind of see where we're at. We are peaking above, but I usually like to wait a couple of hours, at least 3 or 4, before we get some kind of confirmation. Because again, lagging spans still intersecting with the price action, conversion lines below the baseline, those are still bearish signs. Okay. That being said, we need to spend more time at this price point. If we just say another 12 to 24 hours, the price just kind of stays right here, then yeah, the probability of it going higher from there is greater, because it's going to allow for the conversion line to come up above the baseline. It's going to allow the lagging span to be free and clear of price action. So essentially, if you have a copy and paste of that, the price action right here will likely be the case in point where we should see a good entry. So it's right around 2 a.m. Not the best time in the world. But again, on the same accord, there's no guarantees that's going to happen, and that's not a specific time I want to recommend you take entry. Just saying in general, that's essentially where we're at. We need a little bit more time for the price action to kind of average itself out sideways. So that's kind of where we're at there. Let's take a look at T sequential. We're really not seeing much of a sequence here, coming up to 6s and 7s and kind of getting reset. So there's no continuation type of pattern we can kind of rely on. And with this candlestick here kind of getting rejected, there's a great chance we're seeing the price action probably continue to get rejected at that level. Again, right there, the 21.5, 21.6, 21.7 range is a strong resistance zone. Okay. So all in all, I would say that it might be advantageous to wait just a little bit longer. I have a few alts that I'm considering taking shorts on, but I want to get some confirmation, and Bitcoin hasn't confirmed either direction yet. So in all reality, it's just one of those things where you want to kind of be cautious and careful in this environment until we kind of get some kind of confirmation either above or below. I would say I'm leaning more towards a short position if you were to consider one from Bitcoin based on what we've seen here so far. But once again, the candlestick hasn't closed yet. I would wait until this afternoon at the very earliest to see what happens with the market, because a lot of times we can see some significant direction happen right around closure of the traditional markets. Okay, and that's just because a lot of day traders are closing their position before the day ends. They don't want to hold overnight. There's a whole thought process there that filters into a Bitcoin or just the cryptocurrency market. Again, little things to kind of recognize, but at this point, I would say just be somewhat patient for the moment. I would love to take a trade right now, but I don't feel like we have that full-on confirmation. Some coins are looking like they want to come down, and I might send out a signal soon, but on the same accord, Bitcoin is fairly indecisive, and we've got some interesting things we need to kind of wait on to find out where we're at. Again, I'm all about waiting for confirmation. If you're the ride the lightning type and risking certain behaviors, that's perfectly fine. In fact, we have a lot of community members that are using like the Bollinger Bands on the 15-minute time frame. There's a really cool strategy there too, and it's also it's definitely something you can do. But again, me personally, I prefer to just kind of take a trade and sit back and let it do its thing instead of sit there and constantly watch it. Again, different strokes for different folks, but the signals that I send out are usually, I would say, within we could get a couple of hours, but it's also sometimes a couple of days or weeks. And again, swing trading is more my preferred style, and that's just kind of the way it goes. But regardless of that, that's kind of where we're at here for Bitcoin. Hopefully you learned something today, right? Thanks again so much for joining me here. We'll look forward to seeing you in the next one tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks again.